He stood in the middle of the room, eyes scanning every surface, fingers twitching with impatience. The sunlight pouring through the window cast warm shapes on the wooden floor, but his focus was elsewhere. His glasses, his lifeline to the world, had vanished again. For the third time this week, he had misplaced them. The same thing happened yesterday with the TV remote. The day before, he forgot the name of a neighbor he'd known for over 20 years. It wasn't just annoying anymore, it was unsettling. He reached for the edge of the table, paused, and closed his eyes. He tried to replay his last few steps, like rewinding an old videotape, but the images refused to come. Blank. Just static. A mental fog that grew thicker with each passing day. He was 58. Not old, not yet. At least that's what they all said. Still young, they smiled. You're just tired, they offered. But deep down, he felt it. A slipping. Not dramatic, not sudden, but quiet. Creeping. Like sand falling through an hourglass. Slow but inevitable. He'd chuckle it off with friends, joke about senior moments, but when he was alone, there was no laughter, only the echo of uncertainty. Is this how it begins? Not with something tragic. Not with sirens, or hospitals, or a diagnosis. But with something small. Invisible. Forgotten glasses. Missed names. Delayed thoughts. He finally found them on the bathroom counter, exactly where he had left them, just 30 minutes earlier. And yet, it felt like retrieving a memory from another lifetime. That evening, he sat alone with a cup of tea, the warmth not quite reaching his fingertips. A thought began to stir. What if it didn't have to be this way? What if memory, like muscle, could be trained? Strengthened? Protected? He wasn't afraid of aging. But he was afraid of forgetting. Forgetting names. Faces. Places. Moments. Forgetting his own story. So he made a decision. A quiet one. A beginning. To remember, by learning how to hold on. They say time is a thief. That it takes what it wants, slowly, quietly, and never returns it. But time doesn't work alone. It only succeeds when we stop paying attention. For decades, the brain carried him without complaint. It juggled names, solved problems, remembered birthdays, and stored entire lifetimes of joy and pain. But somewhere after 50, something changed. Not dramatically. Not overnight. But enough to feel it. The sharpness dulled. He noticed it first in conversation. Searching for words that once danced on his tongue now felt like groping through fog. He paused mid-sentence, pretending to sip his drink, hoping the missing word would return. Sometimes it did. Sometimes not. He laughed it off. Everyone forgets things, he told himself. And that was true. Memory is imperfect, even in youth. But this was different. This felt like a subtle unraveling. He turned to the mirror one morning, looking past the lines etched on his face. His eyes searched for something deeper, recognition of the self that once was. Was he losing himself, strand by strand, neuron by neuron? But that morning brought something else. A headline in a medical magazine left in the doctor's waiting room. Neuroplasticity, how the brain heals, rewires, and rebuilds, even after 50. He didn't read the whole article then. Just the word. Neuroplasticity. It lingered. Later that evening, curiosity took hold. He read more. And what he discovered shifted something inside him. The brain was not a machine that rusted and died. It was a garden. A forest. A living network of pathways that could grow again, given light, nourishment, and use. Yes, some decline with age was natural. But much of it wasn't fate. It was disuse. It was a lack of challenge. It was living on autopilot. He remembered something his father used to say. If you stop using it, you start losing it. Maybe that was true for the brain too. The science was clear. People in their 60s, 70s, even 80s, who kept challenging their minds, learning new skills, practicing memory exercises, engaging in creative tasks, often showed no significant memory decline at all. It wasn't magic. It was habit. Discipline. Repetition. Decline, he realized, was not destiny. It was only the result of neglect. And neglect, now that he knew better, was a choice. He made a promise to himself. No more autopilot. No more passivity. He would train his brain like a muscle. With patience. With practice. And so his journey began, not backward into what was lost, but forward into what could still be built. It started with a single word, neuroplasticity, and from that, a new world unfolded. He had always imagined the brain like a filing cabinet, fixed, orderly, and slowly running out of space. But the truth was far more extraordinary. The brain was not a cabinet. It was a jungle, ever-changing, alive, and waiting to be reshaped. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to form new neural connections throughout life. It doesn't end at childhood. It doesn't stop at 30, or 50, or even 90. As long as you breathe, your brain listens. It learns. It adapts. He learned that every new skill, every memory test, every attempt at something unfamiliar, no matter how small, lit up the brain like fireworks. These moments created new pathways, strengthening the very fabric of memory, attention, and cognition. Scientists had watched this happen in real time. Brain scans of older adults who practiced just 30 minutes of daily mental activity revealed something remarkable: thicker gray matter, denser connections, and even increased activity in areas responsible for memory. The brain, it seemed, responded best to one thing: use. But it didn't need to be complicated. You didn't have to master chess or solve quantum equations. Even simple daily habits, reading aloud, doing puzzles, learning songs, trying new routines, could trigger plasticity. He remembered a quote from one of the articles: "Neurons that fire together, wire together." It made sense. Repetition didn't just make things easier. It made them permanent. And so he began, not with grand plans, but with quiet rituals. Each day, he would challenge himself just a little. A puzzle here. A memorized grocery list there. He started brushing his teeth with his left hand. He took new routes to the park. He even tried learning the basics of a new language, just 5 minutes a day. At first, it felt silly, even childish. But within weeks, something changed. Not suddenly, but steadily. Names returned quicker. Words came smoother. Tasks felt lighter. His mind, once weighed down by forgetfulness, began to feel agile, engaged. He wasn't reversing time. He was rebuilding. And more than that, he was awakening something long forgotten: the joy of challenge. Neuroplasticity wasn't just science. It was hope. The proof lived not just in research papers, but in his own reflection. He wasn't the same man who stood in that room searching for his glasses. That man was lost in fog. This one had begun to see clearly, not just objects, but possibilities. The brain could be trained. And he was ready to train it. He realized that exercising his brain didn't require hours of complicated drills or expensive gadgets. The simplest activities, done consistently, could reshape his mind and strengthen his memory. It was like tending to a garden, not with heavy machinery, but with small daily acts of care. Here are the 7 exercises he embraced, each a small challenge that sparked his brain awake. 1. Remembering 3 random objects. Each morning, he picked 3 random objects around him: a pen, a mug, and a book. He studied them carefully, imprinting each detail into his mind. Then, after an hour or 2, he challenged himself to recall every single object without looking. At first, the objects slipped away like sand through his fingers. But with practice, he became sharper, more attentive to details. This simple exercise trained his short-term memory, forcing his brain to pay closer attention. 2. Drawing from memory. He closed his eyes and tried to picture his childhood home. The shape of the roof, the window placements, the garden path. Then, he picked up a pencil and sketched the house from memory. It wasn't about the artistry. It was about recalling visual details and strengthening his spatial memory. Each line he drew pulled forgotten images from the depths of his mind, exercising a part of the brain often left dormant. 3. Changing daily routines. One morning, instead of brushing his teeth with his right hand, he switched to his left. Simple, awkward, and oddly frustrating. But this minor disruption rewired his brain. It forced new neural pathways to fire and connect. By breaking the autopilot of habit, he awakened his brain's flexibility and responsiveness. 4. Puzzles and crosswords. Every evening, He set aside 15 minutes for puzzles, crosswords, Sudoku, or logic games. These puzzles weren't just pastimes, they were workouts. He watched as his problem-solving skills sharpened, as connections fired faster, and his focus deepened. 5. Reading aloud and summarizing. Instead of silently reading the news, he began reading aloud. The sound of his voice created another layer of memory encoding. Afterwards, he summarized the article out loud, forcing his brain to process and organize information. 6. Digit span exercise. He challenged himself to remember strings of numbers, first 3 digits, then 4, then 5. He repeated them backward and forward, pushing the limits of his working memory. Though it seemed simple, this exercise built his brain's capacity to hold and manipulate information in real time. 7. Mindfulness and meditation. Perhaps the most surprising was mindfulness meditation. Sitting quietly, focusing on his breath, observing thoughts without judgment, this cultivated attention and calm. He discovered that mindfulness helped reduce mental clutter, improve concentration, and gave his brain the rest it needed to function optimally. Each exercise became a daily ritual, a promise to himself. No matter how small the effort, he was investing in his future. These simple acts stitched new threads of resilience through his mind. And with each passing day, the fog lifted a little more. He was not just fighting memory loss, he was reclaiming his mind. It soon became clear to him that training the brain wasn't just about exercises and puzzles. The body and mind were deeply connected. What he fed his body fueled his thoughts. He began paying attention to what was on his plate, realizing that certain foods could nourish his brain like rainwater on a thirsty garden. The brain's favorite foods. He learned that fatty acids, especially omega-3s found in fish like salmon and mackerel, were like premium fuel for brain cells. These fats helped build and repair neurons, improving communication between them. Bright berries, especially blueberries, weren't just delicious. They were packed with antioxidants that protected the brain from damage and inflammation. Turmeric, with its golden hue, held curcumin, a compound that could cross the blood-brain barrier and reduce cognitive decline. Nuts, dark leafy greens, whole grains, and even dark chocolate found their way onto his grocery list, each promising a tiny boost to his memory and mental clarity. Sleep, the silent memory keeper. He quickly discovered that no amount of brain exercises could replace the power of good sleep. Sleep wasn't just rest, it was the brain's time to clean, organize, and file memories. Without enough deep sleep, memories struggled to stick. Thoughts became fuzzy. Concentration slipped. He began prioritizing his sleep schedule, creating a quiet, dark sanctuary in his bedroom, turning off screens an hour before bed, and learning to let go of the day's worries before closing his eyes. Movement matters. Sitting for hours was a thief, stealing not only muscles but also mental sharpness. He made it a habit to walk daily, letting his feet carry him through parks and quiet streets. Even gentle stretching and light aerobic exercises helped. Movement didn't just strengthen his body, it increased blood flow to his brain, promoting the growth of new neurons and enhancing memory. Managing stress, a brain saver. Stress was the enemy he hadn't expected. Chronic stress released chemicals that damaged brain cells and shrank parts of the brain responsible for memory. Mindfulness meditation helped here, but so did simpler moments. Deep breaths before a challenging task, a quiet walk in nature, a smile exchanged with a stranger. He learned that protecting his brain meant protecting his peace. This was no quick fix. It was a lifestyle, a commitment to habits that fed his mind and soul. The journey wasn't always easy, but every mindful choice, every healthy meal, every good night's sleep was an investment. He was planting seeds for a future where memory could flourish, not fade. He soon realized that brain health was not just an individual journey, it was woven into the fabric of connection. Humans are social creatures. Our brains evolved to thrive in communities, in conversations, in shared stories and laughter. ###the magic of meaningful conversations. He found that spending time with friends, exchanging stories, debating ideas, or simply listening, kept his mind alert. Each conversation was like a mental workout, requiring focus, memory, language skills, and emotional understanding. He remembered the afternoons spent with old friends, recalling past adventures and making new memories together. Those moments felt like medicine for his mind. ###learning new skills. He challenged himself to try new things, a dance class, a cooking workshop, even learning to play a musical instrument. These activities forced his brain to adapt, to grow new pathways, and to keep evolving. It was uncomfortable at times. Mistakes were plenty. But that discomfort was proof his brain was alive and working. Joining groups and communities. He joined book clubs and gardening groups, finding joy in shared passions. Being part of a community gave him purpose, motivation, and new stimuli. Studies showed that socially active people had a much lower risk of memory decline and dementia. Mental challenges beyond puzzles. He engaged in mentally stimulating activities like reading diverse books, writing journals, or even volunteering. These actions required planning, creativity, and critical thinking, further exercising his brain. He noticed that isolation was a risk, not just to the heart but to the mind. When he surrounded himself with others, learned, laughed, and challenged his brain socially, his mind felt sharper, his mood lifted, and his memory clearer. The brain, he understood now, was not just an organ. It was a bridge, connecting him to the world, to others, and to himself. To care for memory was to care for connection. And so, day by day, through community and curiosity, he kept his brain strong. As he walked this new path of care and challenge, shadows from the other side lurked in his mind. He had heard stories, friends and family members slipping quietly into forgetfulness so deep it erased their worlds. Faces blurred, memories vanished, personalities changed. Dementia. Alzheimer's. Words that carried weight, fear, and loss. The rising tide of memory disorders. The numbers were staggering. Globally, millions faced cognitive decline, with cases growing every year. The World Health Organization warned that by 2050, the number of people living with dementia could triple. He thought of a neighbor, once vibrant and full of stories, now lost in confusion, unable to recognize even close family. It was a slow unraveling, a thief that stole identity and independence. The warning signs often missed. Forgetfulness here and there, confusion about time or place, difficulty completing familiar tasks. These were early signals often ignored or dismissed. He realized that many suffered quietly, believing it was just old age, when in truth, early intervention could slow or even prevent progression. The cost of inaction. He imagined what life would be like if he ignored the signs in himself, if he did nothing. Would he lose his memories? His independence? The stories he longed to tell his grandchildren? That fear was real. But it also became a powerful motivator. Hope in prevention and management. The science was evolving. No cure existed yet, but research showed that lifestyle changes, mental exercise, and social engagement significantly lowered risks. He saw a path where prevention was possible, not guaranteed, but within reach. This sobering reality made his daily efforts feel even more vital. He wasn't just fighting forgetfulness. He was fighting for a future where his mind could remain his companion, not a stranger. He chose action over fear. Because neglect wasn't an option. He realized that knowledge alone was not enough. The path to a sharper mind was in the doing, starting now, not someday. The first step, simplicity and consistency. He didn't try to overhaul his life overnight. Instead, he began with small, achievable goals. 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. He wrote down his exercises, remembering objects, puzzles, mindful meditation. Each day was a promise to himself, not perfection, but persistence. Building a daily habit. He scheduled his brain exercises like appointments, sacred moments to care for his mind. Morning was for memory drills, evenings for puzzles and reflection. Slowly, these moments became natural, like brushing his teeth. Tools and aids. He discovered apps and journals designed to support brain training, tracking progress, and keeping him motivated. But sometimes, the simplest tools were best: a notebook, a deck of cards, or a quiet walk with focused attention. Recognizing progress. Some days were harder. Memories slipped, distractions grew. But he learned to celebrate small victories, a word remembered, a puzzle solved faster, a calmer mind. Encouragement for you. If you are watching now, wondering if it's too late or too hard. He wants you to know this: every effort counts. The brain thrives on challenge and care. It is never too late to start. As the days passed, he noticed a quiet transformation, not a dramatic change, but a steady, reassuring strength within. His memories felt safer, his mind sharper, his spirit lighter. He understood now that caring for his brain was not just about preventing loss. It was about embracing life fully, connecting with loved ones, exploring new horizons, and savoring each moment with clarity. #### memory as a treasure. Memories are not just images or facts stored in the mind. They are the story of who we are, woven from every laugh, every tear, every shared moment. By training his brain, he wasn't just preserving memories. He was preserving himself. #### a call to action. To you watching, this journey is open. The tools, the knowledge, the power, all lie within reach. You don't have to accept forgetfulness as fate. You don't have to stand by and watch your memories fade. You can start today. One small exercise, one mindful breath, one step at a time. #### final thought. * Our minds are gardens. What we nurture today blooms tomorrow. * Take care of your mind. Cherish your memories. Because your story matters.